Alright. So, the reason that you guys are always hearing perspective, sexual warfare, competition when we interact with each other, for a couple of reasons. A, there is a boundary of mass. There's a boundary of dead mass. Like, what is occurring is where it is right now in its solid state. Whether logic is running through it or not. The issue is some people aren't logical. They are logical, but they're kind of counter logical in the sense that they are just trying to find a way, and the idea that everything that's there is losing, trying to grab as much of it as they can and keep it for themselves. And that behavior automatically keeps up the motion of us losing things, losing logic, and thus losing mass that can be distributed, shared, and turned into what we want. So there's the logic of what's happening right now as it is, and then there's our attempt to logically expand into nothing, which is what becomes something, right? So what happens is, as we logically expand into nothing, if your logical structure actually makes sense, then you're given a form of sexual approval, which is that's all sex really is. Sexual approval, all that stuff is you make enough sense to survive. You know, we can go back to being animals. We can go back to being genes, all that shit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's really all sexual approval is. Your genes, what you are, logically makes sense for survival. Thus, you have sexual approval to continue on. And it's not always about producing children. What I notice is in states in which high births occur, is in those states in which there is so little logic to compensate for the mass that's dying, that kids are used as an ethical, innocent strategy to stall and buy time for us to figure out how to fix the decay. So what happens is, let's say that somebody logically, this is what's there, and then this is the boundary, and then this is us trying to continue forward. As somebody expands into this, and they gain sexual approval, but logical mass, the dead mass boundary, is returned back to either by somebody taking out of jealousy, or just because that's just the rhythm that we're in right now. What happens is, that form of sexual approval that was created is shrunk back in suddenly to the boundary. And that sucking it back to the boundary, that sucking of all logic back to the dead mass boundary, back to the boundary of all mass, whether it be because someone's jealous, because people are stealing, because people don't care, all that stuff, that return creates a form of sexual violence, a form of prospective sexual violence. So in the instance where you're doing everything right, you're a hard worker, you keep going, you're nice, you're protective, you distribute fairly, you don't steal, all that stuff. In those moments where you're all doing that, you're okay. I'm not allowed to fight against it. But I cannot just sit here and fucking say that you're doing that when you're not. Alright? Fuck you. You have to actually do it. Stop fucking. That's that bullshit, bro. That's that bullshit. Alright. So. No, fuck you. We're not fighting. I'm killing him. Why the fuck would you do that in the middle of my video? Fuck you. I'm keeping it in. I'm a good person here. I don't care. Alright, So. Sexual approval is, oh my gosh, you suddenly look attractive. Oh my gosh, suddenly you're attractive to everybody. Suddenly the idea of you having sex is okay. Suddenly no one has an issue with it. Jealousy occurs, or people are just taking. That jealousy restricts everything. There's no need to get jealous if everybody can have what they want. Jealousy itself is automatically loss. So someone's jealousy shrinks things back to where mass is, and they shrink it even further, causing a dead area of mass where there's no logic to continue. This shrinking, which is what was sexual approval at first, becomes sexual disapproval, sexual violence. And this is how it works. Suddenly you're doing good, and then out of nowhere, for a short moment, underneath everything that's happening, you just hear somebody say, and I just jizz cucked you, or and that's why I fucked your mom, or some shit like that. And it makes no sense. It seems like it came out of nowhere. But here's how it works. As you shrink back to this area, this decay of logic rapidly, which in the opposite direction would be healthy sexual approval, becomes unhealthy sexual warfare. Sex is just wrong in these directions. When logic is decaying and mass is dying, and we know less than what we are, having sex there when we have no intention to continue forward to make more of what's there, but rather to take what's there and reserve it as it's losing, is wrong. And so that decay back creates all forms of sexual decay, sexual violence, sexual misconduct. And it's all perspective, and it occurs so fast. It feels like everybody's saying it in this way that we can't really catch it. But it's still heard. It's still there. That's what it is. It's just the attempt to increase being shrunk back very fast. And that attempt to increase, because sexuality is about inherently increasing and expanding existence, when it decreases rapidly, becomes unhealthy and disturbing. Another example of what it looks like. So, it's just a good shape of how to describe it. This is all logical structure as it is now with mass. This is where mass dead ends, and we don't, and some people don't know what to do about it. And this is our attempt with the logical structure we have and our behaviors to continue creating logical structures to become the mass that we're experiencing. Let's say at all times, this is right now, and right now is attempting to expand into nothing to become right now later. And this is how it works. We logically expand in, and if it's okay, if it keeps going, then we can do physical things. We can have sex. We can spend money. We can keep going, right? But if someone gets jealous, or someone stills, or someone doesn't believe this is happening, or someone just keeps questioning it until it doesn't make sense, so much so that we can't even be logical at this point, and it decays, sexual violence, sexual decay occurs, where sex is just disturbing, unhealthy, and doesn't make sense. Now, I'm a bit of a theoretical physicist, and so I'm going to openly express an experiment that I'm going to try in the future that you cannot try because you did not fucking figure this out. Alright? Don't be fucking jealous. All you're going to do is fucking shrink it faster. No one's going to be able to solve it in time. I'm going to do it. I have it figured out. Okay? So, in those moments where I'm logically expanded so far that I make so much sense, but then we reach the edge of dead mass, and suddenly we just lose track of where we are, and it decays quickly back to where we are. But I've done nothing wrong. It's just that boundary being hit again, and that boundary is of shared perception. In those moments where I still have approval while it's decaying, I want to see what happens if I have sex with someone who understands what I'm talking about during that time. So, let me get my pen. So, what usually happens is, this is generally the boundary that's there at all times. And when you hit it, it kind of gets weird. You start getting to the questions. And then as you answer the questions, as you piece things together, you expand outwards into nothing, right? And the more you do that, the more that the boundary increases. But eventually you reach a point in which you can't answer anything anymore. You can't piece anything together. This is the logical death. This is the logical boundary. Once you hit that logical boundary, your return is somewhat sexually degenerative, but jealousy increases that return to go further. So where we could explain here, jealousy implies loss so far that we can only explain this radius here, and everything else is just there right now. So in that moment where I make sense and someone understands me, preferably, definitely a woman, I think I have an experiment I want to try in which we have sex there, and we see what the results are as far as continuing mass. And it's obviously, it's sexual, but it's also because sexuality is about continuation of mass, of matter, into logical, non-collision, cooperative structure. Here's the thing. My theories as of now, if we have sex while it's on the decay, we might be able to slow the decay down and prevent those people that are jealous, prevent those people that are attacking from sucking us too far so that the surrounding mass here, let's mark it, is dead and we have too much conflict to solve before we can get back to getting to where we were. But here's what I think. I think if we time it perfectly, this is where the intervals came in. If we time it perfectly, where the logical dead ends are, and we have sex there, or we do something to, well, no, it has to be sex, because this has all been about sex this entire time. Then we'll start it there. There will be a logical explosion that returns back to the boundary of physical mass that increases what everybody's doing logically at that point and causes expansion. Now, here's the thing. I just told you, but you couldn't figure it out. You did not figure it out. In fact, I should probably keep this secret, but it's going to be my last attempt, and after this, it's just going to fall apart. After this, if somebody tries this shit without fucking respecting me, it's just going to fucking fall apart. And at that point, I'm safe. Like, at that point, y'all niggas are on y'all are on y'all's own. I can't fucking keep doing this anymore. I'm done. So yeah, that's the experiment I want to try. I want to try to establish sexual continuation, contact or whatever, while logical matter is decaying from the logical dead end, back to physical mass before it gets to the dead mass boundary. And then I want to see if we can time it to be perfectly at the point in which it all makes sense before somebody asks that dead ending question that returns us back to conflict. I think that if we have sex at that point, that these logical extensions will become hardened. That's what I believe will happen. So that's all it is. Anybody else who tries this and doesn't understand it, you'll probably fucking end up dying or suffering, and you won't be able to quote anything that I said because that's not how it works. I warned you.